official, flag of my city where I live.
Oh, and that's your mask.
Yeah, they were sold out the first day they were advertised at our local co-op, which my niece calls the hippie grocery store. Thank you.
In Germantown, Tennessee, Whole Foods is the hippie grocery store. That's where we
consider
are.
that way too mainstream.
Okay, Jackie, we are live on Facebook and it is 10:02. So if you want to start the meeting, I am going to go ahead and put myself on mute because the people call needing the passcode. I'll give it to them. And I'm going to put everyone else on mute except for Robert and Jackie, and we'll go from there.
Okay. All right, welcome to Malice in Memphis. I'm so glad you all are here. I'm very enthusiastic about this short story session for two reasons. First of all, I like to write short stories, and I never thought those words would pass my lips. The other thing is, Malice in Memphis produces an anthology. We have tried to do it every year, in which we showcase our members and work with them to try to make the stories worthy of publication. Carolyn McSparron has been the editor. We've had, I can't find her on here, but we've had a committee working on editorials. Jim is on the committee. Angela and Sharon is on the committee. Who else am I leaving out? Oh, Dee Price. So if you are a Malice member and you would like to be a member of the anthology committee, please talk to one of those people. I am sure they will love to have your help, because what we do is we read the stories and we have a Zoom critique meeting. Mine is tomorrow. And then you pass it on to another editor who has never seen the story. And that is a line editing for public, for punctuation and stuff. And then the anthology committee is going to decide, do we want to publish it ourselves or do we want to seek a publisher? And so one of the things we want to do is make sure that when you submit a short story, it is something that Rob and Michael might want to publish themselves. And some of the other people I see on here who are really good short story writers. So I want to welcome all of you. And what we're going to do is we're going to ask Rob to do his presentation first, and then Malice will have a short business meeting afterwards in which we will all drink champagne, because we are officially, at last, a 501(c)(3) nonprofit. Yay! So, and then we'll have treasurer's report and secretary's report and all that. So now I want to welcome Rob Lopresti, who is, nope, I didn't get it right, did I?
You made the most common mistake, though. You made me Polish instead of Italian.
Lopresti. Now?
That's perfect.
Okay, you've just seen one of the many reasons I do not do, I am not on TV as a broadcaster. He is the author of over 70 short stories. He's written two nonfiction books and 2 novels. He is president of the Short Mystery Fiction Society, which gives out the Derringer Awards. And if you are not a member of that organization, please go sign up online. Every day I get something helpful in my email. Every day I take a note from something that has happened. And often I post it to our Facebook page. So today, Rob is going to talk to us about short stories, which he does so well. Rob, thank you so much for taking the time and trouble to do this. And I might mention that Rob is one of the authors of a story in Low Down Dirty Vote 2, where I just happen to have a short story too. All right, thank you very much. Rob, I'm going to mute myself so I don't inadvertently interrupt you.
And Rob, I'm going to turn the screen over to you so that way you can share your screen. And you should be able to do that now.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate you people coming and inviting me. Excuse me. And I, well, what was I going to say? Yes, I'm lost already. I decided that I was going to do this first part as essentially as a PowerPoint presentation, so you don't have to look at my face the whole time. And then I'll get questions from you. So I'm going to go here. I wanted to warn you of one thing. That's what got me off track here. There's a 1 in 100 chance that my computer will suddenly lose the network. It's happened a few times. If so, I have my laptop ready to go and I will switch over, but there could be a minute of delay as I do that. So if that's what happens, that's what happens. I will get back to you immediately on my laptop. And I apologize in advance, but it shouldn't happen. I bought a new piece of technology to keep it from happening, so fingers crossed. Okay, I'm going to share the screen. Please, Lynn, let me know if it works. There we go. And can everybody see that? Lynn, nod your head.
You're good.
Okay. All right, here's where we're going here. By the way, I see your faces on the right-hand side, which blocks off part of the screen. If so, you might want to rearrange it so they're on top. But anyway, we will get along. So when I was trying to decide what to talk about, I asked Jackie what she thought you people would be interested in. And she sent me what turned out to be a list of 10 questions that she or other members of your organization had sent. So I said, well, I've only got 20 minutes. I'm just going to answer your questions. And then I'll be happy to take other questions as we go. Some of the questions I have a lot to say about, and others I can pretty much just shrug, but we'll see what we can do. So let's talk first about the most important thing, which is me. My wife is over there laughing. That is my email address if anybody wants to contact me. That is my website if anyone wants to contact me. Every other Wednesday, I blog at sleuthsayers.com about something related to fiction or writing or mystery fiction or true crime. And every weekend, usually on Sunday, I write about Little Big Crimes. I review the best short mystery story that I read that week. So you can go there and see what I think about short stories in that way. Now, after you hear me talk, you may say, gosh, this guy is a genius. I wish he would write a textbook about mystery fiction. Just 1 second here. I'm going to set my timer so I know how long I've been talking. Okay. So you'd think I would have thought of this while we were waiting to get organized, but I didn't. All right. Deep pause here. Come on, clock. Yes. Okay. So you might say, I wish this guy would write a textbook about writing short fiction, and I did. I've been blogging about mystery fiction for about 15 years, and so I took the best pieces, about 60 of them, that I did about writing fiction or writing short mystery fiction, and I put them together by subject, and I call it a textbook case, and it's free. So price is right. You can see if you find anything useful there. And here is a photo of a photo of a photo, so it's a little blurry, but that shows you what it looks like. So the first question I was asked was, how big and profitable is the short story market? Well, the answer is, it's small. And these are all the magazines that I consider significant and long-lasting. They're in approximate order, in my opinion, of prestige of being published in them. And I will say I've been published in all 6 of them. There are other ones that tend to be more come and go, that haven't survived very long or don't pay. So these are the biggies, and they're not as many as people would like. And so they're extremely hard to get into. A couple of years ago, an organization I belong to, someone said, there aren't enough markets. This organization should start its own magazine. So there'd be another market. And there was great enthusiasm for that. And I replied, how many of you subscribe to all the paying magazines that are already published? And then suddenly everything went silent. So my argument is, if we could double the amount of people who read mystery short stories, we would get a lot more markets. It's not that there aren't enough markets, there aren't enough readers. That's my humble opinion. So how profitable is it? Not very profitable, and let me demonstrate. This was the first story I ever had published, was in Mike Shane Mystery Magazine 40 years ago, almost 41 years ago. I was paid $30 for it. Now, the Mystery Writers of America says that for a story to be eligible for an Edgar nomination, it has to be in a magazine or anthology that pays at professional rates. Does anyone know what the professional, nod your head if you know what the professional rate minimum is that the Mystery Writers of America says. 25 bucks. So they consider the professional rate now to be at least $5 less than I was paid 40 years ago. So how profitable are mystery short stories? Not very. Now, the most I've ever been paid, and it's a pure coincidence that that cover has money on it. The most I've ever been paid was $1,000 when I won the Black Orchid Novella Award, which was published in this magazine. So that's the most I've ever gotten. I should say it's the most I've ever gotten in one lump sum. We're not talking about reprints and publications afterwards. This is just for a single salary. So it's not very profitable in my humble opinion. So my wife, who's making side remarks over there, says, don't quit your day job. Okay, second question I was asked, what are the biggest mistakes short story writers make? Well, that's a good question. Not reading what they want to write. If you don't enjoy reading something, you're not going to be good at writing it. That's a pretty solid rule. You should be reading short stories, mystery short stories, other short stories, classics, ones that are being published now. If you want to be published writing short stories, you ought to be doing that. Not studying the markets. If you want to be published in Ellery Queen, you should be reading Ellery Queen, and so on. Not writing. It seems silly, but I can't tell you how many people have said, boy, I would love to write, but I can't find the time. You're in the middle of a freaking lockdown. This is as good a time as any to start writing, and write every day if you can. People say, I don't have the time to write. Of course you don't. You have to find the time to write. You have to carve it out. Not submitting. You'd be amazed how many people write the stories and never submit them anywhere. They get scared, or they think it's not good enough, or they don't want to bother the editor. The editors, it's very easy for them. They have an infinite number of electrons that they can send you back a rejection letter. Don't get scared about that. Submit, submit, submit. Not taking short stories seriously. It's easy for people to say, hey, I don't have time or inclination to write a novel. I'll just jot off a short story. If you're not taking it as seriously as anything else you write, you're not going to get into those tight markets. A child is not a short adult, and a story is not a short novel, okay? You've got to think about them differently. We'll talk a little bit more about how you have to think about them. And I want to end with a quotation from a friend of mine who's an excellent writer of mysteries and science fiction, Kate Thornton. She said, a short story needs to have one point. What does that mean? It's true in a novel, but it's even more important in a short story. Every word, every character, every paragraph, every plot twist has to relate to the single point you're trying to make in your story. Okay, no tangents. You don't have any room for them. So she says a short story needs to have one point, and your reader needs to get it right through the heart. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, to me, that means you have to make me care about what happens. I can't tell you how many stories I've read where it's a whodunit story, and it's either Jones, Smith, or Wilson did it. And when you find out it's Jones, well, why do you care that it wasn't Wilson or Smith? You have to make the reader care. I can't tell you how many noir stories I've read where bad guy meets bad guy and bad guy gets killed by bad guy. And why should I care which one killed the other? You have to make me care about it. And so that's why I say you have to get it right through the heart. Number 3, how to start with a vision of the end or build a plot around a character. Well, that brings back the ancient question of whether you want to be a plotter or a pantser. A pantser is someone who flies by the seat of their pants. They don't know where they're going. So, and that depends on what you prefer. It works differently for different people. So I wrote a short story that was published in this issue of Hitchcock called Hammer and Dish. which actually came from a vision I had. And the vision was a big man, the size of a football player, walking down the street and being attacked by a midget. And being afraid to defend himself for fear that he might accidentally kill the guy, because the guy was so much smaller, and who would believe that he was defending himself. That is the only time I have ever written a story without knowing how it was going to end and succeeded in getting it published. So I only plot. I can't fly by the seat of my pants. And I should point out that this is a very short story. I think it came out 4 pages long when it was published. I can't imagine writing a longer story without knowing how it's going to end. So more about plot. Sometimes I get my plots from, well, I get my plots from real life. I get my plots from things that happen to me. I get my plots from other stories that I read. And as I said, the Hammer and Dish I just got out of the air. But Jorge Luis Borges, the great Argentinian writer, wrote a short story called The Library of Babel, which is not a mystery. It barely has a plot. It's basically just a description of a building that contains not only every novel ever published, but every novel that could be published, every book that could be published. And I read that story. You can find it on the web. I read that story and I thought, wow, you know, I could take a tiny little piece of that story and turn it into a crime story. And the result is, this is the current issue of Alfred Hitchcock Mystery Magazine. And the cover story is my story, which I stole the concept, so to speak, from Borges. So that started with a plot. But it's a cliche for people to say that mainstream fiction is based on character and genre fiction, like mystery or horror or science fiction, is based on plot. I think that's kind of a false distinction, because you really need to have both, unless you're Borges writing The Library of Babel. But let me give you an example. More than 30 years ago, I was in a coffee house listening to 2 friends talk, and I got a little bored and I looked out the window and I thought, what if a guy was sitting here and he saw a crime going on outside the window? And because of the conversation that was going on, he didn't feel he could get up and immediately act on what was going on outside. And I thought, well, there's a plot that I could turn into a story, but I needed to develop a character who could proceed the way I wanted him to. It needed a particular kind of person. So I invented, over several years, a guy named Leopold Longshanks, who was a mystery writer. And that became the short story Shanks at Lunch, which was the first story about him. And since then, I have published 15 more stories about Shanks. And so while the first story about him definitely began with a plot, all the others essentially began with a character and trying to think of something for that character to do. So do you start with plot or do you start with character? Well, it all depends. Number 4, how do you fit a big plot with lots of twists into a short story? That's a great question. And I would argue that twists are even more effective in a story than a novel, because they have more of an effect because they fill up a larger percentage of the story. But how do you fit a lot of them in? Well, I have to remind you, every word counts, as I said before. So you can't stick a whole lot of twist into a story. I find that my favorite stories a lot of the time are stories with a double twist, where you say, oh, isn't that clever? Or, oh, I thought I knew how that, I figured that was coming. And then you get astonished by what happens afterwards. My favorite example of that was a story that appeared in Hitchcock magazine a long time ago by Carol Kale called Sinkhole. And I don't know if you can find it anywhere. But a double twist is particularly exciting to me. How many characters can you fit in a short story? It all depends. By the way, a couple of years ago at a BoucherCon, there was a panel on short stories, and one of the questions from the audience was, how many scenes should you have in a short story? And Alan Orloff, bless his heart, answered 4, which is a meaningless answer to a meaningless question, because it depends on the story, which is also true with characters. But let's talk about some essentials here. How many characters can you fit in? The fewer, the better. Depends on the story, of course, but you don't want to have anybody in who's extra, who isn't absolutely necessary. And distinguish. Can the readers tell the stars of the story from the extras? It always bothers me when I'm reading a story and it begins with a conversation between Jones and Smith, And it turns out that Jones is the main character and Smith is just a walk-on who happens to be in the first scene. And I can't immediately tell which is which. I want to know who is the main character if I can tell. And there are ways to do that. One is to have it from Jones's point of view. Another way is to describe Smith from Jones's point of view. Another is to not have Smith be named Smith, but say the clerk or the policeman. Make it clear who is the important characters as quickly as possible. Can you tell who is speaking? If there's a few lines of dialogue, can you tell which character is doing the talking? You should be able to. Think of it like a movie or a TV show. You should be able to recognize who's doing the speaking. And this is my personal bugaboo, but it drives me crazy. So as I said, it's my dead horse and I'm gonna beat it if I want to. Names. If you've got 4 characters, please do not name them Mary, Marty, Mark, and Marshall. Okay? Why do that to your reader? I'm gonna say this again and again. Readers nowadays, they can stop reading your story. They can read the next story in the book. They can pick up a novel. They can go on Facebook. They can watch television. They don't need to be reading your story. You need to make it as simple as possible for them. I'm not saying you should dumb it down, but don't make it more complicated than you need to be in ways that aren't useful to your story. So there are at least 20 letters of the alphabet which have wonderful initials and first names and last names. So don't call them Mary, Marty, Mark, and Marshall. Call them Mary and George and Fred and Louise. And as I always say, in Agatha Christie, if 2 characters have similar names, you know that's going to turn out to be a point of the plot. So learn from the experts. Number 6, if you want to write a novel, why should you write a story? Well, that's a good question. And my answer to that is, think about Elmore Leonard. Elmore Leonard always said that he started with characters, not with plot. And if he was starting wanting to write about a new character, sometimes what he would do is he would write a short story about the character, and in effect, give the person a tryout to see if he thought they would do well in a novel. So he wrote a short story called Karen Makes Out, which you can find in his excellent book of short stories, When the Women Came Out to Dance. And it introduces a deputy marshal named Karen Cisco. And after he wrote that short story, he wrote a novel about her. I'm always tempted to say that he turned it into a novel, but he didn't. He started with a short story and then he wrote a completely different plot with the same character, Out of Sight, which was made into a movie, which was made into a TV series. So that's one reason you might want to start with a short story. Try out your characters. How to expand a story into a novel? That was another question I was asked. And my answer to that is, should you? Because I remember what I said, a short story is not just a short novel. But if you do want to expand a short story to a novel, I'm going to give you something to think about, which is from John Floyd. John is a much more successful short story writer than I am. I don't think he's ever written a novel that I know of, but he's had like 10 books of short stories published, all mysteries. And excuse me, not all mysteries. He's been published in Saturday Evening Post and other places. But he talked about how to write an outline. If you are trying to write a novel or a novella or even a long short story, and for some reason you want to create an outline to send to an agent or a publisher or something, he said what people tend to do, and it's a mistake, is to take your novel and try and trim it down to a 1 or 2 page outline. He says, no, what you do is you start with 1 sentence. You describe your novel with 1 sentence. And then once you have gotten your essence of your novel down to 1 sentence, expand it to a paragraph. Then expand it to 2 paragraphs. Then expand it to a page. Keep expanding it as long as you want. So my suggestion, if you're going to try and turn a short story into a novel, is actually start by getting it down to 1 sentence and figure out what it really is about. Because remember, it should have 1 point, right? How to write a story for an anthology. Okay. This anthology is going to have guidelines, presumably. They're going to tell you what they want, how long it should be, something about what they don't want in it, maybe no explicit violence, no politics, whatever. So you have to read the guidelines carefully, which is true with magazines too. And then there's the question of the theme. if an anthology, it very often has a theme. All the stories have to be about New England. All the stories have to be based on songs by Joni Mitchell, whatever it happens to be. So for example, Low Down Dirty Vote Volume 2. I heard about this anthology that Misty Berry was working on, and all the stories had to be about election fraud or voter theft. And so I said, well, I can write a story about that. And just so you know, you're in the picture. That's my wife. And she just ran out of the room. I should explain, by the way, that a water heater in our lower floor burst, and so we only have half a house at the moment. That's why you're not seeing my office where I would normally be. I'm at the dining room table. So I figured, well, most of the stories that come in for this anthology are going to be about local elections or city or state or federal. So I wrote a Shanks story about my character Shanks, in which there's an election for the president of a board for a nonprofit organization, because I figured nobody else was going to write about something like that. And the story got accepted. So I haven't read the other stories. Maybe all the others are like mine, but I doubt it. Number 9, I was asked, what about critique groups? Well, I don't belong to one. What I do have is a first reader. There's a mystery writer named R.T. Lawton, who's actually been in Hitchcock magazine more times than me. I think he's about 40 and I'm about 32. And he writes, whenever I get a story ready to send to a magazine, I send it to him, and he does the same. And we critique each other's stuff and make suggestions for improving them. Occasionally, I will send it to another reader. For example, when I write historical fiction, I will often send it to a friend of mine who writes mostly historical mysteries. And when I wrote a story in which one of the main characters was a police officer, I sent it to a friend of mine who's a mystery writer and a retired police chief. And I said, you know, I like any of your comments on it, but especially tell me if the cop is making any mistakes. And he found one mistake, which I was happy to correct. But I would remind you that whoever you send your stories to, your spouse or a critique group or a first reader, don't let them boss you around. You are in control of it. It's going to be your name on the story if it gets published. So if you're absolutely convinced that you're right and they're wrong, go ahead and do it your way. You can always change it if the editor later says they don't like it. I just had a story accepted today for an anthology this morning. I can't tell you who because it hasn't been announced yet. But I submitted the story to the editor. They said, I don't like the ending. Can you rewrite it? I rewrote it. A couple of days ago, they sent it back and said, you know, we made the following changes. And I wrote back, I said, I'll accept all your changes, although I can argue about any of them, but there's one thing I want to change. And I said, there's one hill I'd be willing to die on. And the editor said, I don't want you to die on any hill. So he accepted my change. So don't let them boss you around too much. How to self-publish an anthology? Beats me. The only person I know who self-published an anthology was Misty Berry. She's done it twice. And she paid for it out of her own pocket. All the money to pay the authors came from her, and all the money for people buying books go to anti-voter fraud efforts. Well, first volume went to ACLU, second volume went to the Southern Poverty Law Center. So if you want to be very noble and pay for it yourself, you have my permission. On the other hand, I did self-publish my book of short stories because I didn't think anyone else would want to publish it. And I published it in both paper and electronic because I'm egotistical and I wanted to have a paper copy in my hand. And I lost a couple of $100 on it. But a few years after it was published, which was fine, by the way, it was completely within my budget plans. But a couple of years later, Tokyo Sogen, which is the oldest publisher of mysteries in Japan, contacted me and asked whether I would be interested in having it translated into Japanese. And they paid me, well, a lot more than I got paid for any of the stories from Hitchcock when they were published there originally. This is the book Shanks-on Crime in Japanese. And as near as I can tell, the title translates Sunday Afternoon Tea with Mystery Writer, which is fine with me if that works for them. And they were happy enough with the results that they got permission from me to publish another book of my short stories in Japanese, which I believe the title translates their holiday problem solving on holidays in coffee house or something like that. So I'm going to give you one more free tip, which most of you, if not all of you, already know. Unite. Okay, by which I mean there are wonderful mystery writers organizations like Malice in Memphis, and these organizations, and the one Jackie already mentioned, the one I'm currently the president of, the Short Mystery Fiction Society. If you're not familiar with that group, it is absolutely free to join. It simply means you will get email from us. You can submit stories you wrote or that other people wrote as possible nominations for the Derringer Award. And you can volunteer to be a judge for the Derringer Awards, and you can also vote on the Derringer Awards. And we talk a lot about the craft of writing fiction, about our favorite short mysteries, and talk about markets. And we also advertise our members' publications. There's a Facebook page, for example, and I believe a Twitter page, which I don't belong to. I'm not a Twitterer. Okay, and that's all I got. So it is over to you, and I will get out of Facebook, out of PowerPoint, which some of you will be glad to. So I'm going to stop sharing, and we're back. Happy to answer any questions.
So Robert, I have put on Facebook that we're starting our Q&A session, and for them to, there's about 6 or 7 people on Facebook, and for them to submit their questions via Facebook, and I will let you know whenever someone has anything. Everyone should be able to unmute yourselves. So if you have any questions, please be polite and ask away and don't speak over each other. And I'm going to mute myself now.
Can't hear you, Jackie.
Hold on, Jackie. Let me unmute you. There you go.
Can't hear you, Jackie.
All right, is that better?
Yes.
Okay. If you have a question, raise your hand, or if you have a comment so we don't talk over each other. Apparently Rob is leaving us now.
My cat's here, if that's any help.
Hey, Phyllis.
Came up to help.
Anybody? Any questions? Larry?
I stunned you into silence.
No, I just want to add one more thing. If you go to Rob's website, you will find all kinds of posts there. It's almost like a library or encyclopedia of what you would like to know about fiction writing, about short story writing. And I'm not flattering him. I'm just saying what is true. His book, his quote unquote book, is available there. I highly recommend you download it. And use all your spare change to subscribe to these mystery magazines. Otherwise, they're going to go out of existence, and there will be. Okay. Barbara, do you have your hand up, or are you just trying to adjust? No. Okay. Anybody?
Actually, D. Price has asked a question. When you self-publish, what is a major hurdle?
Well, the only time I have self-published was that book, and I actually got a book designer to design it. So I had to find one, and one thing that I found a major hurdle was getting a cover. That is a photograph that I took in my office, and then she made it look interesting and pretty. So that was, I would find it hard to imagine doing at least a paper copy without actually having a book designer who knows what they're doing. Electronically, my understanding is that Amazon makes it fairly simple to do it yourself if you're willing to do it through Amazon. There are other services. I have not tried them. My novella, my award-winning novella, The Red Envelope, is available as a standalone self-published on Amazon. But actually, that's because my very nice friend, James Lincoln Warren, set it up for me without even my asking. So the biggest hurdle for me is how to design the thing. The other thing is you're likely to lose money on it, at least my experience, unless a Japanese publisher discovers you.
Ed Ridgely asks, he says he likes the concept of the John Floyd about writing a sentence and expanding it. Would you recommend that for doing a short story?
For a really short story, it may be overkill. For a long story or a novella, absolutely. And if you're not familiar with short stories, if you haven't written a lot of them, it's certainly not a bad idea, because remember, as I've said, and I'm quoting Kate Thornton here, your story has to have one point. Edgar Allan Poe said the same thing. Everything has to go toward one affect. So one way to do about it is to sit down and say, here's what the story's about. By the way, what the story is about is not necessarily the plot. But write down one sentence and then expand it. And as you go through your short story, go back and look at that thing and say, does this relate to what my story is about? I must say that when it comes to theme, some writers hate the idea of theme. And that's another way of saying what the story is about that isn't the plot, is the theme. When I'm writing a short story, very often I'll be edited. I should say, I quote Gore Vidal, who said, I'm not a writer, I'm a rewriter. I have nothing to say, but a lot to add. And so I think I'm on draft 12 of one story, and that's, it's a long way before it will be finished. And I'm not exaggerating, by the way, because I started writing draft numbers. Thank heavens for word processing that makes it so much easier than handwriting it. I'm sorry, what was I going to say? So I'll often be writing a story and editing it, and I'll be looking at it and I'll read one sentence and say, oh, that's the theme. That's what the story's about. I'll discover it in the text. And then as I go through, I will try and emphasize that, punch it up. So anyway, there you go.
I have a question. Would you just elaborate on what you said? It really struck me to the heart when you said what the story is about is not necessarily the plot.
Right. What the story is about. Let me give you the example that automatically comes to mind was from a novel I never got published. But it was a private eye novel, and it was about like 4 different private eyes and a bunch of different characters. And one of them, the title I eventually went with, and again, I said I never got it published, was called The Hanford Necklace. Does anyone know the phrase Hanford Necklace? Does anyone know about the Hanford Nuclear Reservation? I live in Washington State. On the eastern side of Washington, there's the Hanford Nuclear Reservation, which is where, ever since World War II, they've been dumping nuclear waste. Okay? And
that's where
people in that area who grew up drinking the milk from the contented cows that ate grass from around the nuclear reservation often have thyroid problems. And they wind up having thyroids removed or operated on, and it leaves a scar, which is called the Hanford Necklace. Okay. Now, one of my, and by the way, there are scientists who say there's no correlation, so make up your own mind. One of my characters, who's a bad guy, has a Hanford necklace. And when they're talking about that, one of the characters says, well, everybody's got scars, whether you can see it or not. And as soon as I wrote that sentence, I said, that's the theme of the book. Okay, it's not the plot, but it's the theme of the book. And as I went through, I made sure that every one of those characters had a scar, whether it was visible or not. Sometimes it was something in their past that had happened to them, something that was actually visible. That's an example. It's the only one that comes to mind, but there are plenty of others, which I can't think of.
Now, you just mentioned something that seems to make it very complex. I mean, you're working with a short story, and you have a lot of times you have a certain number of words that you're able to use. How do you go about adding the complexity of character and plot, but still make it simple enough that you're meeting the requirements of a submission and able to tell the story effectively? Because that's where I'd have a tendency to struggle, and when I'm making soup, I want to throw everything in whenever I should probably pull things back and say, no, don't put that much in.
That's a really good point. Yeah. I have a friend named Kate Long, who's an award-winning songwriter in West Virginia. And when she teaches a class about songwriting, she says, where is your close-up? And the close-up is the little detail that tells. And the first example that comes to my mind is from Chris Christopherson's song, Sunday Morning Coming Down. And he says, I got up and I looked for my cleanest dirty shirt. Okay. Those 3 words, 4 words, cleanest dirty shirt, that tells you so much about the guy, right? You could have written paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs and not told you as much about that person as the phrase, my cleanest dirty shirt. Okay. So when you're trying to describe a person or a scene or a situation, look for the close-up, look for those few words that that tell you what you need to know about the person. Sometimes in mystery fiction, especially in hard-boiled, it's often a metaphor or a simile, a way of nailing it down so the person says, that's the one detail I need to know about that person. You don't need to give 50 words about a person if you can just say, that guy looked like, I read something I wrote yesterday, I'm embarrassed to say, where I described the bartender as looking like, his face looked like a bag of grapefruits. And later when he frowns, I said it was a much wrinkling of citrus. And to my mind, you don't need to have a long description of the character. You know what the guy, you know enough about the guy right there. So what you want is don't pile on detail on detail on detail, unless of course you're trying to write the story that is a pile of detail, which is like Victorian writing. You want to find that one magical detail, and I'm not saying it's easy, that will get you through it. By the way, I've had people say, it must be great that all your stories are published by Hitchcock. Under the current editor of Hitchcock, I sell about 2/3 of the things I send there. Before that, it was much worse. Of course, I was a younger writer too. But anyway, so don't assume that I'm a success story, that everything I write sells. It's not true. On the other hand, keep in mind that just because you get rejected doesn't mean you're going to get rejected the next time you send a story out, even if you send it to a different, saying the same story to a different author, a different publisher, excuse me. I'll shut up now. Next question.
Anyone else?
Michael does. Hold on. Michael, let me unmute you, or there you go. You're free to speak.
Okay. Where'd he go? Do you have any tips on plotting? For example, I found the Save the Cat beat sheet written from movies can be adapted to write short stories. You have any special tips?
First of all, I should point out that Michael Bracken is a hell of a lot more successful short story writer than I am, with something like 1,000 short stories published, and I'm not exaggerating there.
Yeah.
And he is a winner of the Ed Hoke Golden Derringer Award from the Short Mystery Fiction Society. So he should probably be talking rather than me. I will point out that in my free textbook on writing short stories, I have 2 chapters on plotting and plotting problems, which I should probably be cheating and looking at right now because it would remind me of what I want to say here. But there's a piece I refer to in there, which is actually something I stole from a book on how to get from a concept to a plot in 30 seconds or 30 minutes, I forget. But you'll find it in my book of textbooks, in my textbook. And what the writer essentially said was, if you think you know what your plot is, take 5 minutes and just write it down. No self-editing, just write it down as fast as you can. I did that. I had a story idea that I could not turn into a plot. An idea is not a plot. And I could not do it. And I wrote it down 3 times the way he suggested. And the 3rd time it turned into a story plot, and it's the most recent story I sold to Hitchcock. It hasn't been published yet. So I got from an idea to a plot by the simple process of writing it down several times and just letting my brain go and not trying to edit it. And eventually I figured it out. So that's one way of doing it. Other suggestions, again, if you go to my textbook, you'll find lots of suggestions, which I'm not going to try and pull up out of my tiny little brain this morning. I need more tea.
Tea. Okay.
What do you suggest, Michael?
Let me
I was
unmute.
going to ask. Michael, welcome, and tell us what you think about this.
I don't want to steal Robert's thunder here. Like I said, the Save the Cat beat sheet that was written for movies is a very good outline for how to plot anything, any short story, novel, movie. And I've used it, and not religiously, but I've written some stories following it point by point. One sold to Hitchcock, one sold to a woman's magazine in a different genre. And so since I discovered it, I've used that. If I'm having trouble with a plot, it's not coming to me, I'll look at the Save the Cat beat sheet, see how my story fits into that and go, oh, that's what it's missing. I need to add that. Now, not every story is going to follow it exactly, but it's a good resource to help you structure a plot, because a plot is not just a series of events. It has to start somewhere and end somewhere, not just things happen.
Thank you.
And this is, what did you say? The cat? Beat the
Save
cat?
the Cat beat sheet. You can find it online. It's from a book about script writing.
Okay.
By the way, I'm going to go slightly off topic because I'm thinking about other sources. David Mamet, great screenwriter and playwriter, he wrote a book called Bambi Meets Godzilla, or Bambi versus Godzilla. Bambi versus Godzilla. And one of the things he says in that is that in every scene, every character has to want something.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't know what that every character wants, sit down and think about it, because you don't know your characters well enough. And that has nothing to do with plotting, except plotting and character are eternally intertwined. That's a bit of wisdom I just remembered.
Well, it seems to me that would be true. Anybody else? Do we have any other questions? Anybody on
Phyllis
Facebook?
Appleby online, and I can't believe she hasn't asked a single question. Or Angela. I always depend on y'all. Come on, ask questions. Anyone? None?
Okay. All right. Then is there, I do have this one small thing. Are we going to be able to see your presentation online, or is there someplace we can go to get it? Rob?
Don't ask me, ask Lynn.
Well, the recording will be posted, but Robert, if you were to email me your presentation, I can post it along with the video whenever I post it online later today.
I'll be happy to.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Rob, thank you very much. I took copious notes, and I probably will go back and review. I want to thank everybody for coming, and particularly thank Rob for doing this. One of the advantages of Zoom is that you get wonderful people to come and talk to you that couldn't possibly get on a plane and come. So at least that has happened for us in this quarantine time. Thank you very much, Rob. I'm so glad everybody is here, and especially thank our guests for coming. We're always glad to see you. And now what we're going to do is have a Malice business meeting of some short duration. So
hold on, Jackie. Make for sure that you let everyone know next month we will have Christopher Rice speaking. He's the son of Anne Rice, and he'll be talking on how to translate being a writer into the business world, and how to balance everything from working on novels to working with TV people and radio and so forth. So we're looking forward to that, and submit your questions so that way we can give those to him in advance as well.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. I just want to make sure that all those people who are here as guests, you are so welcome to stay. If you would like to hear about our anthology and listen to our discussion about being legal and what that all entails and all the business of running an organization, you're so welcome to stay and take notes. But otherwise, that's what we're going to be doing. Thank you very much, Rob, for coming. I can't believe I was so lucky as to fall into this short story society. I am often distracted by all the emails because I take notes so copiously. And that's why some of your names are familiar. And so thank you very much. All right.
Thank you very much.
All right, Angeline. Angeline? Hi, would you talk to us a little bit about the anthology?
Good morning, everybody. Hopefully everybody's well. Jim, you might want to unmute yourself as well, because we are a tag team representing the anthology committee for Malice in Memphis. We're trying to get the stories that have been submitted already for the Mississippi River theme anthology, get those back up and running. We're reviewing them. We are critiquing them. We are meeting individually with each author via Zoom to offer any feedback or suggestions on how to make the story stronger or better. And we're also open to new members who may not have had the opportunity to submit their stories during the first wave, about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So if you're ready, if you have a story that fits in with this particular theme and you want to submit it, please get it to Jim Pavila and I. Jim, you want to wave? There he is. That's my partner right there. But
his name is Angeline. Marilyn.
Marilyn.
Yeah, right.
It's a secret identity.
Right.
But get them to us. So what we're looking for are, the theme is Mississippi River. We have a variety of stories, from mysteries to ghost stories to paranormal or whatever, but it all has to fit around this theme. We're asking you no more than about 6,000 words, which is probably more than what is needed, but try not to go over 6,000 words. You are welcome to submit more than one story. No guarantees that that story will be included or any stories will be included. It's gonna, the decision will be made by the anthology committee, as well as our editor, Carolyn, who looks like she has ditched us, who will be providing the final edits to the story. So we're doing it a little bit differently than what we've done in the past, in that the stories are starting with the anthology committee. And then once we get them to a certain point, then they move on to Carolyn for final edits. So just bear with us as we're going through this process. So please don't be offended if you submitted a story before and Carolyn gave it a pass the way it was, and then you get a page full of red, purple, green edits. Don't be offended. We want this book to be as strong as it possibly could be. And we are interested in every one of our writers being successful. And we know that we all have a variety of skill sets. So please don't take offense, because none is intended. This is nothing but a love project. And any opinions or advice that we offer is simply to make it stronger. You take it or no, and apply it or not. But our intentions are to make your work better and make the organization better. So once the stories have been submitted to us, as I said, we're meeting individually with each writer via Zoom. Our first meeting, and 30 minutes or less conversations. Our first meeting is actually tomorrow. And as we're going through each of the stories, we'll send emails out to you, inviting you to participate in that meeting. We are sending out our critique to you so that prior to the meeting, so that you'll be able to follow along with some of the advice that we're offering. There's no, what we want and what I think the organization has always wanted is to make every writer who's in Malice as strong and crafted and skilled as they can possibly be. And so that may mean you get one story full of critiques, you get it back to us, we send it back with more critiques. We're going to keep working and polishing until we get it right. So again, don't take offense about that. We're just trying to make everybody stronger. You got anything else to add about that, Jim?
You have to be the most gentle editor I've ever seen. She will make you love getting beaten up. Yeah, that's what I hope we try to do. I hope we try to have two different perspectives or three different perspectives on a given short story, and offer those as options or comments or things you can look at and take. As has been said, there are some hills you want to die on. That makes perfect sense. I'm going back to the very first editor I ever had on a book, on my first attempt at a book, and he typed. He not only made every comment on the document, on the manuscript, but he typed a separate listing of all the comments. I had 440 comments and 3 were positive. I was clinically depressed for a month. I hope that doesn't happen here.
Let me just say too, I did have one question that came in the, you have to be a member of Malice in Memphis to be considered for this anthology. But just because you are a member does not mean your story will be accepted. It has to be good. And the other question that and we are, Angela and Jim, tell me if I'm wrong, but you are accepting other names. If you want to be on the anthology committee, people are welcome to join you. Is that not correct? All right. The other thing that I'm hoping the anthology committee will soon take up is, once these wonderful stories are compiled, what do we want to do with them? Do we want to submit them to a publisher? Do we want to publish them ourselves? And that is the recommendation, I think, should come from the anthology committee and be voted on by the whole. As it is now, we have gone with 2 publishers. One we left because we were not sure what was going on. And the second one we had, the one we have now, is on month to month. Our book, the one that's being considered for the Imaginarium Award, is book to book, month to month. And I don't think that, and they are not going to accept another, work, and nor am I crazy about having us submit to them. I don't feel like we've gotten anything out of them. No publicity help at all. Angela, you were on there. You knew about this, right? I mean, we couldn't even get paperbacks to sell. So that is one consideration. Anybody who has any ideas, please submit them to the anthology committee. I'm going to be sitting by doing whatever they ask me to do, but Angela and Jim are going to run this show. Is there anything else that needs to be discussed on the anthology side? Richard?
He's still muted.
You got to unmute. There you go.
I'm on there.
Yes.
I guess I'm kind of confused. At first, I'm hearing that the anthology committee will submit their suggestions and the author can take or leave those suggestions and that's it? Or the other thing is they've got to approve it. Which is it? I'm kind of confused at this point.
It's both.
Both.
We are deciding which stories are accepted based on the publishability and making certain that they're not offending any of the, or violating rather, any of the expectations that's in the Malice bylaws. So, and if the story is not able to get past us or get past Carolyn, then it won't be included in the anthology. So yeah, we're offering critique, and we're also making the decisions on which stories are being accepted.
Everybody consider this when you submit a story or when you submit a novel to a publisher, and the editor comes back and says, you know, you have to change this, that, and the other thing, and the implied answer, rest of that sentence is, or I won't publish it. Now, remember what
we're not quite that hard-nosed about it. I mean, we want your stories to be your stories. You know, the way Angela, the way I write, the way Jim writes, the stories that we tell are not going to be the same as what Ken might produce or what Phyllis may produce. So we're not trying to make your stories into Angela's work, Carolyn's work, or Marilyn's work, or Jim's work. We want, I guess somebody said something about it, you know, carving and, you know, cutting through the coal to get to the diamond. That's what we're doing.
Well, what Rob said he rewrites his 12 times. He's on the 12th draft. So don't be discouraged. I just think this is such a good thing, a growing process for everybody. The editors will learn something. The writers will learn something. I'm just very excited about this process. And then I want to have I'm very excited about having an end game where we have somebody who will publish us or we will publish ourselves. So thank the Anthology Committee for your work. Richard, did you get your question answered?
Yeah, can you hear me? I just lost the screen. There's something wrong on my computer.
No,
we hear you and see.
You can still hear me though?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I just lost the picture. Something happened here. I don't know whether it was the mute or whatever, but yeah, you answered my question.
Okay. Are there any other?
Yeah, one final thing I forgot to mention, the deadline. Since the majority of the stories have already been started and going through this process, we have set a soft final. We're aiming for a September 30th to have every story submitted, ready to go, and ready to do whatever it is we're going to do with it. If you've got a brand new story that you're submitting, the deadline will be September the 15th. And we're going to have to make that pretty final because that's only giving you 2 weeks to kind of fix some things or turn it around. So if you have an intention to submit another story or a brand new story, get going on it and get it to us as quickly as possible.
Angela, do you want me to, I mean, I can put that on our Facebook, on our website. So that way anyone who goes to the website who are members can see it and people who aren't members can be aware of it.
Right.
And we can have a submit form on there or an upload document. So that way it can go straight to you and Jim if you wish for me to do that as well.
That's a good idea.
I mean, the process in place of just having it emailed to us is working.
Okay.
So I'm kind of afraid about adding or introducing another step because it may not work from that. I mean, I don't know. It would be fine, Lynn, if you think that would be easy to do, but it's also perfectly fine to just email those stories to us.
Okay.
I'd like to have something on the website that at least tells the rules so that people and where to go, maybe your email addresses, if you're good with that. Because I want it, I'm like you, Angela, and I want it to be as simple as possible, but I also would like to have it, people be aware of it on our website. So you can go to it and say, oh, I forgot what's the word limit? Oh yeah, here it is, 6,000 words. I forget the word limit all the time on things I'm writing. Are there any?
Lynn, I'll also send you, because we're noticing some formatting issues, which is no big deal at this point because we're just in the critique phase. But these formatting issues could potentially create problems for us when we're getting ready for publication. So I'd like
Good
to
point.
have something for people to refer to about how to organize your story even now, because it's going to be a storm to try and fix it on the back end. So
Yeah,
if we
if
can
you'll-
do correct
if you'll send
formatting
me
on the front end, that would
everything-
be great.
Yeah, if you'll send me everything that needs to be, that a user needs to have, I'll go ahead and create a page on the website that will give all the outline and all the details, and that'll just be our standard page for submissions and so
Sounds
forth.
good.
Okay. All right. Are there any more questions that have to do with the anthology? Okay. I don't see Barbara here, but I bet she's on Facebook. Let me see if I can look.
I'm here. I'm
She said-
here.
Oh, you are? Oh, there you are. Yeah. All right. Can you give us a treasurer's report? And-
Yes. Last
Do
month
we
we had,
want that live on Facebook? Do we want the treasurer report live on Facebook? Is that something we want the whole world to know?
Oh, that's a thought.
Just
Question?
tell us how your knee is.
well, I went to the doctor yesterday, got the staples out. I still can't bend my knee. I can walk though with a walker, but you know, other than that, I guess I'm okay. We're moved. As you can see, my surroundings are very jumbled at the moment. So a lot of things going on in 1 month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now she's got the arduous chore of filing an IRS quarterly report, which apparently can be done on the postcard. Is that
Right.
true, Barbara? Did that work?
I have not done that yet. This is the first time I've been able to get to my computer.
Oh, really? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Lynn, can you kill the Facebook?
Jackie, if it's a sensitive issue to discuss any kind of financial issue on Facebook or on our recorded meetings, then I move that we just go ahead and have Barbara submit that report via email, and then that way that will handle her stuff.
All right. That's a good idea.
okay.
Is everybody okay with that, having an email report? All right. Again, I want to thank Barbara for, in the midst of all this moving and falling and splitting her kneecap, helping me get this organization legal. I'm very, very grateful for her support. Especially as I kept calling her back going, are you sure this really doesn't look like blah? And she'd say, yes, this is the way. So I really appreciate Barbara's help.
Thank you.
Anything else? Well, one thing I do want to ask is, do we have anyone who's has a new release coming out? Any short stories that are being published? Any new books coming out? Phyllis, I can't believe you've been idle. Richard.
Well, Jackie, there is a question from, I'm going to butcher your name. I'm sorry, but it's Ridhar. And I've got you on mute if you wish to ask your question about the anthology.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I haven't been particularly active for a while now. So is this anthology the new one? And what's it called? I don't think I knew this one.
This is actually, Shadar, this is one that we started a couple of years ago. The theme is the Mississippi River. So the stories have to have some connection, either historically or modern or whichever genre you choose to write in. But
Okay,
just
that's
relate
what
to the theme of the river.
That's what I think I sent in a story either it was last year or earlier this year.
There's another one that we had worked on that we've also started, but we're trying to finish up the Mississippi River thing. The other one that you may be speaking of is the one, the Tattered Letter. which we'll get back to at some point. But right now we're focusing on the Mississippi River one.
And I think, if I'm not wrong, the working title of this is Lies Along the Mississippi, which means,
Okay. I didn't know the title. Good.
oh,
good to
I
know.
thought that was the working title. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was asking what the title was itself since I was doing the cover. So I was like, I have no earthly idea.
Maybe I'm wrong. Jim, do you
The-
remember?
The committee
Did
will
I-
figure it out. Well,
Did I just make that up on the spot, or anyway? Lies Along the Mississippi is the way I titled my draft. Came up with the title for my story. But all these stories have to lie along the Mississippi someplace. It could be a lie about the Mississippi River. It could be a dead body buried somewhere near the Mississippi, or somebody who's from Mississippi or near the Mississippi, or has a memory about it.
All right, I won't take up your time now. I'll email you offline, and I can ask my questions. I'm sorry, I've just been out of the
No,
loop for a while.
You're certainly welcome to ask your questions, because I feel sure that everyone else is,
mhm.
supposed to, will probably have the same question. So we don't mind questions at all.
You're such a beautiful writer. I hope you are able to send something in.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm actually looking for that email that I sent out. In a while, I never heard anything afterwards, so I was like, it was some kind of a murder on, in Memphis. So I'm thinking it is the same anthology, but I'm not sure. That's pretty much it. I'll resend it if if you haven't, I don't even remember who I sent it to. I don't think
Send it to me and Jim Pavela.
Okay, good. I will do that.
I am so glad that everyone is interested in this anthology and getting back to helping each other become better. I mean, there's no point, in my opinion, in being a group that just has speakers. We need to get back to being a group that helps each other become better writers and produces an anthology that showcases our work. Now, Richard, do you have a book coming out?
Actually, I've got, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. The Audible version for Pact with the Devil came out last month.
Okay.
An Audible version of Rescue in Time, which
Pirate book.
is right. And actually, it evolved from the short story that I submitted to the Memphis River anthology. It morphed into a novel. It's going to be coming out, and the Feet Society has agreed to promote the book.
Oh, good.
And the Audible version, and I guess I'm going to be invited via Zoom to address their wonderful group. So
That's terrific.
that sounds exciting. And other than that, things have been kind of quiet. I guess I got 3 more books on Audible in production, and it's kind of an exciting process. So you guys ought to try it if you can.
Well, I'm going to go Audible if I can. Let's see what happens. Anybody else? Anybody on Facebook? Maybe I should get on.
One other thing. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Along with the release on the Audible books, I've been given a number of what they're called promotion codes. And if anybody would like a free copy of the book, email me and I can send you the promotion code so you can obtain a free copy. So,
Oh.
if anybody would like a copy of the book, email me.
What's Oh, sorry. I was trying to be on Facebook and here at the same time so I could see. I mean, Dutch is on Facebook, and but apparently I am technologically challenged and cannot do that. Lynn is laughing. Do not laugh, Lynn. speaking of Lynn, I frankly don't know what we would do without him. He has been a terrific communications chair, and all the wonderful little blurbs and things, ads that you see are Lynn's work, which he does in addition to writing about 100,000 words every week for his business. So thank you, Lynn. We really appreciate you.
I would say send chocolate, but I don't need it, trust me.
And we
Yes.
appreciate you too, Jackie. Appreciate your
Well,
energy.
I am so committed to this organization, and I thank you all so much for the work that you have put in. This is just not a good time. We should all be together, and we should be talking to each other and poking pencils at each other's work. I want to personally apologize for the plague, but I'm so grateful that we have Zoom.
Yeah, you know, you wrote about a plague, so I think you're the one who actually instigated this whole thing.
I did not do that on purpose. And really, it has proven to be a bad time to release a book about the yellow fever. Are there any other, do we have any other questions, any other announcements? Phyllis, I hope we hear something from you soon. I can't believe you don't have another book or short story or something coming out. But
Don't you have one coming out, Jackie?
I do. Justice Tomorrow, which my critique group is just kicked me on and kicked me on and kicked me in the butt on. But Justice Tomorrow will be coming out August 15th at long last. I will be so anxious to hear what you all have to say about it, because I cannot believe that I'm as bad as the critique group keeps telling me I am. So anyway, and I want to thank Lynn for my cover and back page and all the little things that he gives me to work on and send out. So thank you all very much. I'm very grateful to Lynn and to my critique group. I think Larry is on here somewhere, or he was. But anyway, anybody else? Okay, then we will see you next month. Well, actually, I will see Jim and Angela and Dee Price tomorrow at 1:45 for my critique. I'll wear my helmet.
Lynn and Ken as well.
Right.
Mhm.
And then we'll look forward to Barbara's report on the Treasury. I hope it's good.
Oh
Actually,
yeah, Barbara will sing you tomorrow too. That's right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you all very much. We'll see you next month for Christopher Rice. Bye-bye.